are you? And thank you so much for joining us. And could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, Tando, just to say, first of all, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. No doubt, like you said, my experience with Harry and my experience of birth before having children as well. So it's really lovely to be able to do this with you, definitely. I'm doing okay. Allegra is 3 weeks and a couple of days old now. So still very much in the newborn phase, very much messaging you, being like, Tando, what's going on? And appreciative of your advice and just taking it every day as it comes. So I am a pharmacist and I'm also an academic. And I've also been big kind of, what's the word? Like kind of, I'm trying to think, like, devotee is not the best word, but somebody who's really,
Advocate.
that's it, advocate, and somebody who's really into the practice of mindfulness since I was a child. So meditation and mindfulness have been something that have been in my life since I was about 9 or 10 years old. And so thinking about how we met, it was really lovely to meet during the course of my master's research into this. And I'm happy to talk about that a little bit more if you'd like me to as well in a bit. But just so lovely that I feel really aligns with the idea of having a birth where you're present and a birth where you feel what's happening and what's going on and you're there attending to what is in the moment. And so it's been really lovely to have that practice outside of birth and then experience that in the context of birth as well, and to understand that there's a place for this within birth, despite watching all the movies where people scream twice and then there's a contraction and a baby.
Yeah.
Just
Far from that.
yeah, exactly. Far from that. Completely far from that. So it's really nice to kind of have brought this experience to birth right now and to have done that with you along the way.
Oh, lovely. I love that introduction. So, yes, I guess for our in terms of our story as well, like how we met, I think it was such a wonderful way. So, back in 2019, I set up this charity when the Embrace reports came out about
Mhm.
the maternal mortality rates of Black and South Asian women. And there was a lot of talk about, oh, what do we do about this, and why is it unfair? Is it, Black and South Asian women's bodies? Is it this or that? And I was thinking, gosh, whilst we're doing all of this talking, actually, there are women out there who need support, and we need to do something about this, because whilst we're still trying to figure out the whys of this,
Yes.
there are people who need help. And actually, this is like something that should, like, let's just put it into action instead of like just talking.
Yes.
And so me and a couple of other people set up Birthing in Color, which is a charity. And then you sent us an email. It was the 6th of April, 2023. I looked it up because I thought, oh, how long have we known each other?
Yeah.
And I was reading through it and I was just like, I loved how, like, yeah, you mentioned, you introduced yourself and you mentioned mindfulness. And I remember our first conversation that we had because you were trying to get some participants for the research that you were doing. And you were sharing a bit more about your birth experience with Harry, which we'll get into a bit later. So, how did you find doing the research? How was that process for you? Is there anything you wanted to share about, what the research aim was, what
Mm.
you found through that research? And yeah, I guess what we'll get into what inspired you to
Yes.
do the research a bit later. But I think it would be good to get into, yeah, the
Mm.
thing that pulled us together initially.
Yes. Definitely. I cannot believe it's been almost 3 years then that we've known each other. How wonderful.
I
Gosh.
know.
And
I'm going to be thinking about that on that date this
yes.
year. Don't mind me if I send you some cheesy
Oh,
message
it
saying
would be so
it's
lovely.
our meeting anniversary.
I love it. I love having these little dates in the diary. Do you know what I mean? Little memories of the ways that we met. And like you said, it was so serendipitous that I sent you an email. I guess I came across Birthing in Colour online and it championed exactly what you've just said, the needs of Black and brown women. When so much talk is happening and there's lots of policies that have been put out there, but you don't really see it enacted, you start to think, well, what's happening at grassroots level for these women? And then I came across Birthing in Colour and I was like, brilliant. Everything on your website, Dando, all of your lovely smiley faces. And I just thought this seems like a really warm and welcoming place for Black and brown women who perhaps are anxious about labor, birth, postpartum, and they're able to share some of those anxieties in a safe space with other women and with these lovely birth workers who are there to hold that space for them whatever that they might be going through. And I just thought this is brilliant. If you're happy to just help me out with perhaps helping to find some lovely participants who'd be willing to try some mindfulness practices, how wonderful. And specifically black and brown women is who I was looking for, because it very similar to you in the same way. My aim was to start thinking, well, what can we do on a downstream level? What can we do at grassroots level? That, yes, and I think you and I are both aligned with this. We recognize that the upstream systemic factors need changing. Definitely, we're not taking away from that, but that is happening very slowly. And so while that's happening, these women are still suffering, still anxious, still nervous about labor and birth, which actually can be such beautiful experiences for them. And so, can we help them and empower them so that when they do enter into this experience, they actually feel a lot stronger and they can recognize perhaps some of these issues that are arising and attend to them mindfully as well. So, it was lovely to have that shared goal when we met to talk to you, like you said, a little bit about Harry's birth and then what brought me to this research. But the research itself then had a shape of its own, which was so beautiful. You very kindly helped me find some participants who joined the group. We had 4 women join in the end, which was lovely, all identified as Black pregnant women, which was lovely as well. We had you come in for a session because they wanted to hear from you about your experiences too. So we had a course that was already, it was 4 sessions that were based on a pre-existing course that's offered at Oxford University Hospitals. And I found out about that course. It's called the MBCP for NHS. And I reached out to the person, they'd done some research into that, and they found it was 100 participants, and they found an improvement in things like maternal stress levels, in a reduction in depression, an improvement in a reduction in anxiety levels, and an improvement in both negative and positive pregnancy experiences. And by negative, you'd think it's the things like the stress, the anxiety, the depression, but the positive, they had reports of participants saying things like when they saw the scan of their baby for the first time, they felt more mindful, more present for that. When they met their baby for the first time, they were more present because they'd taken part in this mindfulness course. And I just thought that was so beautiful, both negative and positive. We often think that we do some of these practices to stave off some of the difficult things, the challenges, but actually the fact that some of these practices can help us meet the positive experiences more in a more present way, more mindfully, is really quite beautiful. So I reached out to the principal investigator there and just said, in this research, I think it's brilliant, but you haven't published any demographic data. Who was what's the demographics of the women and the partners who took part? And she said, by virtue of it being in Oxford, it's largely white, middle class pregnant women. And so that's when I thought, exactly as we've been saying, brown and Black women could certainly benefit from something like this. Let's give it a go. Let's conduct some research and see if they could. And so this lovely principal investigator was willing for me to conduct research using that 4-week program. And I added an extra 5th week, which was co-produced with the women's. And then the qualitative research was some wonderful interviews with my participants where I got to see so many different things in terms of their improvement. So they talked about being more mindful in everyday life, mindful showering, mindful pooping, just being more aware of these experiences happen. And one of the participants mentioned in showering, she started to notice how her baby responded to the water in the shower more than just herself. And that was really beautiful. They talk
Beautiful
about,
way to connect.
yeah, definitely, Tana, and weaving mindfulness into everyday life as much as possible as well. So one of them talked about how she had felt really nervous about welcoming this baby into her family. This was her 5th baby, and she was so nervous. But now, being more mindful, she could recognize what was leading to the nerves, and it was her previous birth experience. The 4th birth that she'd had, this was her 5th child that was going to be coming. And so it was really lovely then by the end of the course for her to reflect on that and say, doing these practices regularly, sitting down, doing a body scan, noticing my breath, being more aware of my feelings, has meant that I'm actually quite happy and quite hopeful about having this baby enter into our lives, which was really beautiful. And the last point that I'll just mention was about something I found that was not documented in other studies. So a lot of my research was found and backed up by other people who've done research. But one thing I found, which was really beautiful, that my participants reported that I couldn't find elsewhere, was an improvement in compassion for oneself and compassion for others. And the story that one of the participants told was she was at the school gates. She already has a son and she's going to be welcoming in a second baby. And she was pregnant. And another mother came to drop her child off. And she said, "Oh, you're pregnant," looking at her, and said, "Oh, look forward to having no sleep then." And she was immediate when she reflected on this afterwards, she said, "I would have been taken aback. I would have been so affected by somebody sort of attacking me. I would have thought, why would she want to say that to me?" And she said, "Because I've been doing the course, instead I stepped back and I wanted to know what was it perhaps that was going on for her in that moment." So she said, I asked her, I wonder why you might say that. Has sleep been difficult for you? And this mother just opened up to her and said, since my baby was born 3 years ago, it's been so difficult. I haven't even got a single night's sleep. It's been so hard. And she came away from that conversation feeling like she'd connected with somebody so differently to how she would have done if she hadn't taken part in the course. And she felt so much compassion for her. And I thought that was really quite beautiful, right, Tando? Really
That is so beautiful. Like, what a gift as well. A moment that could have been ended up maybe in a conflict,
yes.
and she used mindfulness to instead actually connect, and have that compassion, like, one of the findings from the study. How
Mm,
beautiful. And just especially like when we can extend that compassion of like for ourselves, then it's easier to do it with other people. And then what does that then do to the perceived stress levels that we experience? And we know as well that when women are pregnant, it's like everyone wants to share something with you. It could be great story, but
yes.
often it could be things that are just not helpful at all. And what I loved about collaborating on this and this research that you were doing is that it was such a beautiful tool to say, you can take this with you wherever you are. In this moment, I can just have a bit more awareness. I can choose to connect to myself. I can connect to my baby and even postnatally. And it's just a practice that you can keep on doing. Now I want to go back to Maya, little Maya, when you were growing up and when you first heard about birth and what your perceptions are, because I love that, like talking to you now, what really struck me as we've been talking is it's almost like we speak the same language, kind of.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is, as a birth keeper, I'm so mindful of going, okay, like, look, let's look at the natural side of things. Like, women's bodies know what to do, and they work, and also let's acknowledge that we live in a society where sometimes that's not the prevalent message that we're getting, or also people do experience real trauma and go through situations. Sometimes, people we trust aren't as kind necessarily, or just sometimes things don't go as we hoped, and we need those interventions as well. And so what I really like about like hearing you speak is like it's almost like being a bridge between those two worlds, the nature and the science, and being able to bring those two together as well, rather than having this approach of like, oh no, we'll just look at one way and there's only one way that is right.
Yes.
So I really love that. So let's go back to many, many years ago, little Maya, when you first heard about babies or birth or growing up, like what informed your perceptions about birth and femininity, womanhood, whatever, wherever you want to take this
Thank you,
conversation.
Gunther. It's such a lovely broad question. And it's really, my mind is thinking about so many different things. I'll start with thinking about, I guess, my heritage. So, my background is I'm South Asian. My grandparents were born in India. My parents were born in Kenya, and I was born in the UK. And my grandparents on both sides, my parents have 9 brothers and sisters each. And so meeting my grandmas growing up, and just as I grew up, realizing that they were so much more than grandmas who gave me lovely sweets and looked after me and gave me hugs. They were women who gave birth to 9 children each. And both my grandmas actually lost a child as well. So they both gave birth to 10 children. So that's incredible to imagine that happening. We don't have the records of when my grandmas both were sort of married or anything like that, but I think they were quite young. So probably late teens, early 20s. So for a big period of their life as women, as sort of young women, they were pregnant and they were looking after children. They were looking after multiple children as well. They were managing households. So I just think when I look back at that and think, wow, and I'd say probably when I was in my early 20s, that's when I started to think of my grandmas as people rather than grandmas. Do you know what I mean? And you start to think, wow, this is what they've done. This is what they've accomplished. My grandma on my dad's side also lost her husband, so my grandfather, a good like when I think he was in his 40s. so late 40s, early 50s. So she was alone raising those children for a long period of time, and in the UK. And equally, both grandmas had periods of time where their husbands just weren't around because they were either working abroad or unavailable. So they were in the house with the children. So again, it just makes me think, wow, the strength that has come from these women, that's my heritage. That's just incredible. And that definitely held me in a good place when it came to being pregnant both times with Harry and Allegra, just thinking, this is what I've come from. This is my lineage. This is the strength.
Yes.
And I remember you reminding me of that during one of our antenatal appointments as well, that just think about that. And it's lovely to add richness to it as well. Neither of them are alive anymore, so I can't really ask them questions about what that experience was like. But I do imagine sometimes that what must that have been like, that household with all these children of different ages and boys and girls, and what they were like with their different personalities, and trying to make sure that you honor each one and their needs. That must have been quite a challenge. And so it's lovely to think about that experience and to reflect on that and to draw from that, what would I like to do for my children, and what kind of a family would I like to raise and to be around, which is really, really nice. And now just thinking about your question in terms of what did little Maya think about birth? And I guess I was exposed to a lot of the Western ideals on TV of what birth looks like. And so it did just feel like it's something that just happens. First of all, I guess I had school education that tells me biologically this is what happens. A woman falls pregnant. It's mainly vaginal birth. This is the expectation. So you internalize that this is the expectation. And then growing up, I think it was still a bit of a taboo that we didn't really speak much. And maybe it's South Asian culture, maybe it's culture in general, maybe it's South Asian culture compounded with British culture. And we don't really speak openly about them. Like this woman went in, this is the type of birth that she had. You just see an aunt or a friend, like mum, one of mum's friends go into hospital, they're pregnant before, then they have a baby, and then you just go and meet them and their baby and take some presents and that's it. So you don't really explore what that whole experience is like of being pregnant, then giving birth, and then postpartum, until I guess you do hit your sort of early 20s, I guess, when I started reflecting on my grandma's experiences. And so I guess I thought it would just be easy and seamless because that's what I've seen on TV, a bit of pain, maybe a little bit of screaming, and then baby's here. And then in my 20s, when I started to really think about, okay, what might this look like? Let me speak to people. And some of my friends were pregnant and they were honest about their experiences as well. And like I said to you, Tando, in one of our first meetings, I don't think I have many friends at all who have given birth vaginally. Most of my friends have given birth either with intervention in terms of having an assisted delivery or given birth with a C-section. And so
Okay.
it was so interesting to come to you and for you to say, actually, my experiences, lots of the people who I've helped, who I've supported, I have given birth vaginally. And I just felt that was such a surprise. Like as I've grown older as well, and more of my friends have had children, they've elected to either have a C-section or, like you said, some situations have arisen and then unexpected things have happened, and that has led to intervention or medicalization. So now, just to finish off answering your question, I guess, if I had to imagine what little Maya or 20-year-old Maya would have wanted for birth, I guess little Maya would have thought, great, two pushes and a baby's here. That's all I really knew. 20-year-old
Yeah.
Maya would have thought, I guess, yeah, probably I would prefer as little intervention as possible because it would be quite nice just to see what my body does. And I think that's probably what 30-year-old Maya and now late 30s Maya has also managed to continue on with, that belief of just, let's just see what happens. If this is a natural process, and I can't imagine my grandma's had any intervention in any of those 10 births, if they're able to have that experience and that's just them trusting their body time after time after time, is that something that I could potentially do and see what happens? And so yeah, it's quite nice to reflect on that and think, what would I have wanted? And being able to also think of that in the context of Allegra's birth as well, and how that, yeah, played out.
Oh, I love that. It's so wonderful thinking of little Maya because, little Tando is also into this like mindfulness. It wasn't something that I then kept on doing, and maybe I'd go back to it every now and again. And, many years even before that, little Tando would hear, cousins, older aunties, whatever, talking about birth experiences. And I was always drawn to babies. I've always looked after babies from when I was a child myself, and I always had these big questions like, where do babies come from? And what are they thinking? Like, what is their consciousness when you're connecting? And I always felt like I could really, really, really connect with babies. And, back in those days, we didn't have the internet
Yeah.
and we couldn't just look up all of these birth stories. So I'm happy that
Fantastic.
little Maya and little Tando met. I think we
Yes,
would have had a ball of a time had
we
we
would have.
met in person and all the conversations we would have had. Um,
Yes.
I'd like you to take me to then once you were pregnant with
Yes.
Harry, talk through, what that experience was like, what you were hoping for, and the birth experience with
Yes.
Harry. You can
Yes.
share as much as you would like to share. Just let the conversation take you to wherever.
I would, Heather, definitely. I'm just thinking about what you said about the breath as well and how beautiful that was, that you just came to your breath one day. And I'm thinking about some of the mindful birthing tools that we talk about. So Nancy Bardaki, who put together the 9-week mindfulness-based childbirth and parenting program, which the 4-week program was adapted from, she talks about your breath being your forever friend. And I just think that's so lovely. It's like you said, you carry it wherever you go at any moment where you want to come to it and you notice it's a bit tense, it's a bit short, it's a bit shallow. And I think that's really that sort of freedom that you have with something that exists, that will continue to exist, that you were born with, that you will die with, this breath, this inhale and exhale. I just think that's really, really wonderful. And just talking about how lovely Tando, thank you for sharing that. It was so lovely to hear what little Tando was like and how interested you were in all of these experiences. I think similar to you, I really liked hanging out with babies, but I guess because people didn't speak much about the birth experience, I didn't really know much about it apart from what I'd seen on TV. And then when I came to being pregnant, I always wanted, so this is now coming into sort of Harry's story, I always imagined that I'd just be surrounded by lots of other pregnant women. I don't know why. In my head, I just imagined being in, I guess, essentially like a commune, but like a school hall. It's like
Oh, what a
just lots of,
beautiful thought.
yeah, lots of
Like
pregnant women just sitting.
oxytocin
Yes.
city.
That's it. Just lots of pregnant women sitting around me, all of us just giggling, sharing our experiences, what it's like to be pregnant, how excited we were. So when you mentioned the fear, that is something I never thought of until I became pregnant. And I guess maybe it was because I became pregnant during the pandemic as well. And I guess what you and I've spoken about, that idea of being informed, is a really lovely way to prepare yourself so that if you do have some of these fearful thoughts, you are able to speak to them and meet them and say, yes, I am worried about this, but actually I've looked this up about this and the risk of this is actually quite low, or this is what can be done in that case, or you can speak to somebody about it. Instead, it's just, here's the information, do with it what you will in some of these antenatal classes. And I think that can heighten people's anxiety and fear as well,
Yeah.
rather than actually addressing it and saying, some of you might be worried about this, saying the sort of C-section rate in the UK has gone to almost 45%. Some of you might be worried about this. Let's talk about it. And I
Yeah.
think that's where some of these kind of co-produced or open spaces where you can say, we've got an empty session today. Let's just talk about this because this might be something that's on many of your minds. That I think is really lovely. And that's what you do at Birthing in Colour. You have these times, moments for people just to have these conversations,
Yeah.
which I think is lovely. So just coming back to Harry then, being pregnant during the pandemic then meant that this idea that I had of all of us sitting on cushions, pregnant women in this school hall and around each other, obviously couldn't happen. And I fell pregnant in early 2021, so just after the Christmas lockdown. And so I was very nervous. I was unsure. Hospitals were, some were open in terms of maternity wards, some were closed. There was this idea of should pregnant women be taking the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, or not?
Yeah.
And so the information at that time was no. And then there was a U-turn on that in May. I think I also felt really nervous at the beginning because I have always thought being pregnant is one of the most important jobs in the whole world. Like I never, it's to carry a child, to raise a child. I look at Harry, I look at Allegra. Sometimes I sort of step back and just think, cell for cell, I grew you in my body. Like how incredible is my body? How lucky am I, like you said, to be a woman? How fortunate to be able to have this power, I guess, to be able to just this innate power that my body, I didn't even have to check in. It wasn't conscious at all. I just left my body to it and it was just doing it. And how wonderful. And so to have the second experience after the first, where I thought, oh my gosh, what's happening? Is my body doing the right thing? I have no idea. Growing harried, and I'm having these midwife appointments. They're like 10 minutes long. I just go in. They're always delayed. They're always then cut short because of the delay. And there's so many pressures I can see in the hospital already. We're all sitting next to each other with masks on. And it's very much, how are you? Let's check your urine towards the end stages. Let's measure your bump. All right, see you in a few weeks' time. That's it. And so you think, what about everything else that I'm going through? What about my body is changing and I don't fit into my clothes? And I've never had that before as a woman. No autonomy over how my body looks. I'm aware when if I go through a week of eating pizza, I am going to put weight on. Whereas here, I don't know if it's the right rate or not at the right rate. And I don't know what to be, just even something as basic as that. I don't know what to be wearing. At the time when I was pregnant with Harry as well, I had some spots. So I was again, like like cosmetically, I don't know what's safe for my face and I look different too. So all of that experience is just not met by the current NHS service. And so you just have that at home where you're sitting, and especially during the pandemic, then sitting, thinking, overthinking, worrying, wondering. And so that's where I think I just broke down one day to Adam and just said, I'm really not sure whether I'm doing the right thing here for me and for baby. And I don't know if there's anything more I should be doing. And so my Adam just said to me, I really don't know what I can advise you, Maya. And I thought, let me reach out to my friend, my incredibly good friend who has a daughter. And at that time, her daughter was about 4 years old. And I reached out to her and just said, how did you do it? How did you do it? How were you pregnant? How did you cope with this of like worry of you're doing the most important job ever? And are you doing it right? And she said, Maya, I know you and you're a really positive, happy person. And that's the person who deserves to experience this pregnancy. And that's the person your baby deserves to experience as well. Somebody happy and positive over the next 9 months. And she said, I don't know what might work for you, but I think it's worth you just taking a step back and thinking about what makes you feel connected to yourself, because that's what's going to hold you in a really good place during the next 9 months. And so I did that after that call and I started to think, well, it's meditation. Meditation is something that's really helped me come back to myself, helped me, like we talked about with the breath, just noticing, just being, removing myself from this anxious future of will it work out? What will happen? I have no idea. Will the hospitals be open? How will things play out? And just coming to now. And now I'm safe. Now there is no issue. Now I'm happy. Now I can choose how I want to be in this moment. Now is okay. In the future, yeah, of course, it's going to be a mystery and I'm going to feel uncertain, but now I'm all right. And so my meditation, then I started a meditation practice, 10 minutes every morning, which really helped me throughout my pregnancy with Harry, and just helped me settle. And that's, I think, what I needed throughout that pregnancy. I was excited to have a little boy in our family, Tendo, as you know, there's loads of girls. And so Harry is the first boy on my dad's side after four female grandchildren. So just totally doted over. But all of us were like, we have no idea what to do here. And so it was
And
just very
also,
much
like, I'm thinking about, like, that beautiful imagery of like all being surrounded by all of these pregnant women around you, and then coming to the reality of lockdown where, we couldn't even create that how maybe you might like to create it. It was like, oh, where are all these women? Everyone is locked in their own houses, worrying, and the impact of all of those things as well, it just really highlights how even the external things and how like they can affect and just how I guess birth isn't just a physical thing is what I'm saying. It's the mental, emotional, spiritual, all of those aspects, and it's where there's just no hiding place, like everything, every emotion can come up onto the surface. And how beautiful that you had that conversation with your friend and that wonderful advice that she gave you, it's
Mhm.
just like, yes, actually connect with your breath. What fills your cup and what's good for you is going to be good for baby as well.
Definitely, Tando, definitely. And I think you're right. It's so sad that that's the experience of many women during the pandemic. I have a friend who works as a GP who said she's having a lot of patients now come to her, female patients who had a child during the pandemic and are now really nervous to have a second child
Yeah.
because that's their experience and that's all they know of what it's like to be pregnant. And like you said, there's so much more to it. Even, I guess, this time being pregnant a second time and being able to go on the tube. That was something strangely I was craving. And then after doing it twice, I was like, I don't know why I was craving this, but it's just about being outdoors and being connected with other people. And just like you said, that enhances your mental state, enhances your spiritual state, your emotional state, which we weren't able to have during lockdown because we were all quite isolated and disconnected, which was hard. And I think that definitely played into my experience with Harry then. And it probably did, despite the meditation, it did still make me feel quite uneasy at times, especially when the hospital said things like, we can't show you the birth center because right now there could be women birthing and you haven't had a COVID test done. And then we can't organize organize a time for you to have a COVID test done. So just trust that the birth center is a safe space for you to be in. And I think for somebody like me who really would have liked to see that and visualize it and imagine myself in that space, it was really hard then just to think I will be safe there without any having a look at it, any prior knowledge, nothing like that. So I think it was kind of tempering the way that I empowered myself with trying to be as open as I could and knowing what I needed to know to be kind of to be able to be pregnant and to be safe in those spaces in a medical environment. When Harry did eventually come, so Harry came at 36 weeks early. My waters broke on, I think it was a Monday night, early Tuesday morning. And Adam and I were like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. We'll just ring the hospital. And the hospital said, come. But we stayed in hospital then for about a day or so. That whole Tuesday, yes, I think we left on the Tuesday afternoon. And we were there just trying to see if labor would start spontaneously, which it didn't. And so we were told, we were given advice. You could either stay in hospital or you could come back. We were kind of told, if you stay in hospital, you get to keep the bed. And we just thought, well, if we want to really get oxytocin flowing and be able to have kind of a more of a natural experience to start to birth through my biology, then it would be lovely if we could do that at home with the cats and with some pizza and watching fun
Yeah.
movies and things like that, rather than staying in hospital where everything was kind of drawn in terms of curtains because of COVID and we were all in different spaces. You were very dark in the middle of a ward just with curtains around you. You could just hear other women laboring, but you couldn't speak with them. You couldn't understand what their experience was. So it was quite abstract really just to be in that space and just to hear the noises and hear people's appointments and just feel like, oh gosh, I would prefer to be at home. I think that would be a much more comfortable place for me to be. And so we went home, but labor didn't start spontaneously. So we were told, come back on Friday. If labor hasn't started spontaneously, then you can be induced. And so we knew a little bit about induction, but not much. And I think at that point, there could have been more that was told to us about the induction process at this specific hospital, as well as what the induction process would entail. We did have one midwife who sort of chuckled and said, you don't want any medication, but in induction, you might need medication. And so we were like, what do you mean you might need medication? And he was like, well, think about having an epidural. And that's really all we got told. So that's it. So that changed my mindset into thinking, okay, well, I guess with an induction, I'm going to need an epidural because that's this person's kind of beliefs that they've mentioned here and they are a midwife and they know more than me. And so then we went in on the Friday. We went in at lunchtime, we'd called, we were told labor ward has a bed. You could meet your baby this evening. We were like, brilliant. Adam, coming from the background that he comes from, his dad is a practicing Muslim, and in Islam, Friday is a very auspicious day. And I was born on a Friday as well. So I thought, oh, we could meet our baby on a Friday.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, Heather, as you know, Harry was born on a Saturday.
Harry was just telling us he's going to do his own thing, and he's
He
been
is
true to
so
form
cute.
since.
Exactly. And true to form says exactly. So they're on the at lunchtime on the Friday. Nobody comes to see us until 5 p.m. when a midwife comes and says, I'm really sorry, we forgot about you. And I'm coming to see you now. I'm gonna kind of hook you up to the machines, just check you're okay, baby's okay, blood pressure's good, and then I'm gonna call the medical team to come and induce you. So by this point, we still think it's 5 o'clock. We could still potentially meet our baby in a few hours. We don't know much about, again, induction and what it entails, but it could be something that happens quite fast. So let's see. At 8 o'clock, the shift changes. Another midwife comes and says, the other midwife was trying to call the medical team. She did it multiple times between 5 and 8 after she came to see you. I'm not going to do that because I think it's pestering them. She's done it multiple times, so they should come when they're ready. And so again, me and Adam were like, it caught up in the system, Tando, and just feeling like I guess we're at the mercy of what decision midwives are going to make in this case. So they essentially have the power here to decide where people come, whether to contact people. We can't call the doctors ourselves, and we don't want to scupper that relationship as well because we don't know how long they're on duty for, and they could be the person who decides what certain things happen, don't happen, gatekeeping in a way. So we just thought, both of us being from a medical background, we're aware of the politics of the NHS. If that's the decision she's made, let's hope that the midwife who tried to call multiple times between 5 and 8 got through at some point and we're on the list somewhere and some doctors will turn up. It ended up being that she finished her shift just before midnight. A new midwife came on at midnight, and at midnight, sorry, then the doctor turned up and said, I'm going to induce you at midnight, Tando. So we were like, okay, we definitely can't meet our baby now, but I guess
Yeah.
maybe it could again just happen. She's obviously inducing us at this point because things could happen quite fast, or maybe they could happen slowly, but this is obviously their choice to do it at midnight. So I was induced at midnight. For the first couple of hours, everything was okay. There was the cramps and they weren't too bad. And I was saying to Adam, I even said to Adam, if this is labor, this isn't too bad at all. I spoke far too soon, Tando. At sort of
Yeah.
2 a.m. by that point, I was just really tense. I was struggling. I'd done my meditation, but it hadn't really helped at that point. And I was just really finding it quite hard. I was listening to some prayers as well and just generally kind of chilled out music, just trying to help myself with this pain. It just felt like really intense period pain. And normally in that case, when I've had periods for as many years as I had before, I take ibuprofen, but you can't take ibuprofen when you're pregnant. So again, I just felt like there was a tool that I would have normally used that would help me that I was not at my disposal at that point. And to compound that, then there was a trainee midwife with the midwife who was on shift at midnight. And the trainee said to us, I can't find the midwife who's on duty. She's gone missing. For the next sort of 4 hours or so, she kept trying to look for her, she couldn't find her, and so me and Adam felt even more at sea in terms of, like, who's taking care of us? We were on this dark ward, completely alone, this poor trainee midwife who didn't know what to do at that in that situation, and I was just in pain, and Adam just saw me there, sort of really struggling in pain, trying to do my best with dealing with the pain for hours, and then by the time the midwife did turn up, she then looked at my notes and said, "Oh, you're PPROM, you're premature, your baby's going to be 136 weeks, your labor ward's problem. There's nothing I can do for you." And so again, we're just both feeling like, oh my gosh, Adam felt really angry at that point. But I said it's the same thing about the politics of the where we are. She's in charge of lots of things, Adam. She decides what happens to us now. We have to keep her on side, kind of. So you can't really challenge somebody saying something like that at this moment. She then kindly helped me under one arm and Adam on the other arm to get to labor ward. As we get there, a consultant says to her, "You need to cannulate this woman because she needs to have antibiotics." And I didn't really need the antibiotics. It was more because my waters had broken. They were worried about an infection to Harry. I was taking oral antibiotics. I'd made sure I'd taken my oral antibiotic that day as well. So I really didn't need to be cannulated. And I tried to voice that as a pharmacist. This is my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, Tando? Like, I've had
Exactly.
a look at this. I've checked it's safe in pregnancy. I've double checked the doses. I've made sure I'm taking them at the right intervals. And so I was just completely unheard. And so she did try and cannulate me, but it is like 6 o'clock in the morning. We don't know where she's been. She did it at the nurse's station because there wasn't a bed for me at that time as well. And the cannula tissued and there was blood everywhere. And she said, "It's tissued. I have to go now." And so Adam ended up cleaning up all the blood around my hand and it was dripping. Adam said, "Just don't even look at it, Maya. It's dripping on the floor." It was so painful, Tando, on top of the pain I was already experiencing. And then my poor husband is having to clean up all this blood at the nurse's station. She's left. Another midwife came at that point and said, "Even though that cannula didn't work, I still have to do it." And I said, "But I've already told you I've taken the oral erythromycin. And if I'm induced, then I'll meet my baby soon. I don't really need to have this." And she was like, "Nope, I need to do it." And she sort of did it, but it missed and it really hurt again, but at least it wasn't bleeding as much. So that cannula was in now. And she said, "Now I'll take you to a bed. A bed is ready for you. And now we'll carry on the process." And so I said, "What is the process?" And she said, "Well, we just need to check how many contractions you're having and how things are going." And I said, "I think I really need an epidural right now because I guess at that point, and I was just feeling so unsafe and unsure. I didn't know if this pain would continue. And I guess that's the other thing. There were no conversations with any of the midwives during Harry's experience about the pain. There was nothing about, "What pain are you going through? What are you experiencing? Let's talk about this." We would expect it to increase as we get closer to labor. There was none of these open conversations. And so I'm experiencing the pain, feeling like I'm doing that completely alone, feeling worried about this pain and how it's going to affect me, not having any of the tools available to me to deal with pain that I normally deal. Like that's what I normally do with my breath, which I couldn't. I was just
Yeah.
feeling so tense and ibuprofen. So I'm just thinking epidural was the best thing then, and that's what that midwife had said before anyway. So maybe I can't cope with pain, and maybe that's why I need to have an epidural right now. Those are the thoughts going through my mind. This is no judgment on anybody else who has an epidural. This is
Of
just the
course.
thoughts
Yeah.
going through my mind. So the anaesthetist is called, and at that point, luckily, the midwife from the day before, the 5 p.m. midwife, turned up. I mean, Adam were like, "Oh my gosh, it's someone who cares about us, Tando. So it's her. She knows us." And she was like, "Oh, you guys are still here. I thought you would have had your baby yesterday." We were like, "We thought we would have had our baby yesterday too." And she said, "I'll get on it. I'll get the anaesthetist to come." So this is around sort of 10 a.m. now on the Saturday morning. She gets the anaesthetist to come. He's lovely. It feels like we're okay. We're on labor ward. It feels a bit more clinical, and Adam and I are familiar with clinical spaces. He administers the epidural. Things seem like they're going okay. We have a chat with him. And then he says, "Maya, my machine is beeping. It's showing that your blood pressure has plummeted to 75 over 50. Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, it must be wrong. I'm absolutely fine." Within seconds, I lose consciousness. So I'm out and I just hear just lots of noise. And then when I do come around, there's loads of people around my bed, loads of people. From it just being the midwife and the anaesthetist, now just lots of people. One woman steps forward and introduces herself as the consultant and says, "Maya, your blood pressure is so low and it's staying low that we're really worried about you and we're really worried about baby. And we're going to need to take you in for an emergency C-section." And she started telling me about some of the risks of the C-section as well. And so she was very kind and she wasn't heightening any of the risks. But one of them she did say is very unlikely, but it could happen is we need to do a hysterectomy. And at that point as well, I just thought, but I want to have more children. Like I've never even entertained this. So first of all, I never imagined having a C-section. And now what could happen during that C-section? I've already been in what I term as unsafe spaces up until now, and I don't know who I can trust. And now this could happen. And I know she was very kind at telling me the risk is really low, but it just really alarmed me. And so at that point, I just said to her, could I just have 10 minutes? Could I have 10 minutes where I'm just able to eat something and I'm just left alone? No one's messing with me. No one's trying to cannulate me or catheterize me. I'm just left alone. She looked at me quizzically and she said, well, you can't eat anything because if we're going to go for a C-section, we'd need to have you kneel by mouth, but I
Yeah.
can give you 10 minutes while we're prepping the ward. And I was like, oh, thank God. So they catheterized me, and then I looked at Adam and I said, I'm going to take the 10 minutes, I'm going to do my meditation, the meditation that I've done every day up until now, sort of throughout the pregnancy. And so I tuned into my meditation and I could just feel myself come to back to me, I feel myself reconnect. And I could understand that this perhaps was the safest thing for me and baby. It was something I'd never expected to happen. And again, I have nothing against C-sections. It was just more the fact that I felt during this whole process, my voice wasn't heard. I was just in
Yeah.
it and I wasn't part of it at all. I was just patient with the child. And this was the decisions. These were all the decisions being made on my behalf without my involvement. And so this meditation helped me just recognize that even though this is happening and you didn't really have a part to play in it, your part can happen now, where you come to this moment and you recognize this is the safest thing for you and baby. And so I started to feel myself just settle a little bit. And then my meditation finished and she came back into the room, the consultant. I looked over at her as if to say, yep, let's go to theatre. And she picks up my readings and she said, I don't know how you've done this. I've never seen this before, but you've managed to stabilize your blood pressure and baby's blood pressure. You no longer need to have a C-section. We're going to still monitor you, but you can birth vaginally. And I just burst out crying, Tando. I burst out crying. Adam burst out crying. We just
Mhm.
like, finally we're here. Do you know what I mean? Like finally we've
Yeah.
arrived in this whole experience that like, this is us. Now I spoke up and I said what I needed and I was listened to and I was given. That's the other thing I think about. If she had said to me, "No, sorry, we need the theatre time is now. We've got an appointment. We need to take you down." And so many things could have happened to not allow me to have that 10 minutes, that very sacred 10 minutes that brought me back to me and changed the course of my birthing journey. It was just amazing that's what happened. And so then after that experience, I could feel like Harry's head coming down. And even at that point, I was like, I need the toilet. And they were like, fine, go to the toilet. But nobody said to me, well, that would be part of the process,
Yeah.
of transition.
Definitely.
They were like, when you go to the toilet, nothing will come out. And I was like, well, this isn't helpful. Like, and so I took Adam in with me with the drip and everything. I was like, Adam, I need the toilet. Adam was like, you can't give birth in a toilet, Maya. So this is all just very confusing. Again, there's nobody just sitting with me going, Maya, are you all right? Maya, come, let's talk about this. What's just happened to you? Maya, just take some deep breaths with me.
Yeah.
You know, if I think again, comparatively about that experience versus my experience with Allegra, with you and Peace there, just telling me, Maya, come to your breath. And just that moment where you've got advocates who are on your team, who are fully there for you, who are saying, this is, I know you, this is what you need. Let me help you get there. Come to your breath. Whereas that just felt like it was very much like I'm just trying to feel my way through my experience with Harry. I'm not sure what's happening. I really don't feel safe. Um, and it got to the point where I think I was pushing for about 2 hours, and then another consultant came in because after that trip to the toilet, then I was like, "I think I'm dilated." And they were like, "No, no, no, you can't be. You've only just had the epidural." And then they looked and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you are dilated. Start pushing." And I just thought, "Oh my gosh, this again just feels like I don't think I should be the one saying I think I'm dilated. I don't know what's happening here."
Yeah.
Well, pushing, 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 feeling absolutely exhausted, being told we can see the head, and then half an hour later being told we can still see the head, and just thinking, "What's happening?" And then another consultant coming in and saying very kindly that, Maya, you did something incredible this morning with meditation, but don't feel like you need to keep pushing yourself if you can't. So if you need the help, we're here and we can assist you with deliveries. And so I spoke to her and said, what are the options? And she said, we could do a 1-2, so we could do a forceps. And I learned about them both beforehand in some of the antenatal classes. And so she said, I think forceps would be best considering the position of where we think your baby is right now. And it would be quick. You would only need a few contractions in theatre. And so I said, let's go ahead with that. Adam had real reservations with that. And only afterwards did I recognize that I guess Adam's experience as a bystander in all this, Tanda, was so, so difficult. Just
Yeah.
imagine that, like, you think you're gonna meet your baby on a Friday, you go into hospital, you're forgotten about, you're not even in labor or pregnant. You see your wife going through all this pain, you see people being just quite cold to her, your labor ward's problem, I'm not gonna call the doctors to induce you, seeing having to clean up blood off her hand that you never expected to have to do, not having slept for hours. They didn't also feed Adam, they fed me, but they didn't feed Adam, and then seeing this whole thing happen with meditation, and now seeing me dilated, and now me saying, "Yes, let's go to theatre." And so Adam at that point was like, "Maya, can we stay here?" And I was like, "What?" Oh, Tando, I was like, "What's wrong with you? We need to go to theatre. That's how we're going to meet our baby." But I guess for him, that labour ward, that bed was where he felt safest in that whole experience of, if we stay here, I understand what's happening. I know what's happening. I can be sure of what's happening. I have no idea what's going to happen in theatre. But we ended up going down to theatre, and actually in theatre, it was a lovely experience. The people in theatre were very supportive. They all introduced themselves. The anaesthetists were Northern like Adam as well, so we had a bit of banter. So there's things that we didn't expect to have
Yeah.
after such a stressful like day or so. And it was really nice then. And then there I was told, just like, this is the time to push and this is what we're going to need from you. Take a deep breath here, do this here, which was lovely. And then we met Harry there in the theatre and tried to establish breastfeeding quite soon after. Adam took him for a little bit of skin to skin as well while they were stitching me up. And so it was actually really quite nice to have moved from that really dark ward where we felt completely alone to this really buzzing theatre where everybody introduced themselves. I think there was a point, Tando, after Harry was born where I said, "Everybody, do you mind if I just have your attention? Thank you so much for helping me welcome my baby into the world." I think I did that. I know, it was just really nice. And I remember one of the sort of theatre staff coming up afterwards and she said, "It was really lovely that you did that you just thanked all of us, even though you didn't know any of us." And I was like, "Well, this is a big moment for me. Like, I've been waiting to meet this little boy for 9 whole months, and you're all here. And you all must be doing things that are helping me safely meet my baby that I don't even know about. So I just wanted to thank you." So it was
Oh,
really, really quite nice to have that experience.
that
Yeah.
is so beautiful, and it's so you as well, like, just through this experience, it really struck a chord when you were saying about, like, just being told, imagine at your most vulnerable time in your life, we've forgotten about you. Your
Yeah.
labor ward's problem, and that experience not being listened to, just being dismissed, and that attitude of like, no, policy is policy, even though you're saying, hey, hang on, an expert in myself, but also in the field of medicine. I have been taking the antibiotics, and gosh, and even just Adam's experience, like him as a partner, somebody who's going through it, not only just a bystander. I always say this thing of, you know, mom's carrying baby, but dad's carrying mom and baby. And just thinking about how he must have felt through that experience and helpless and, just all of that stuff. This is, you know, the, s- the things that I also, I guess, I'm fortunate to see as a birth keeper, where if I'm working with maybe people second time around, we can talk about those experiences and really unpack them and see that actually, no. Do you know what? In that situation, Maya, your body didn't fail. Your baby wasn't doing the wrong things. The
Yes.
environment was so important, and thank goodness you were able to just come back to the breath and think, let me just take 10 minutes in this moment, And I think that really had such a profound effect on then, like, what happened next. It could have been a very, very, very different experience.
Yes.
You're not being told, hey, do you know what? Actually, this is normal and this is what might happen next. And of course, you're going into the toilet because you want some privacy, you want some safety, so that's instinctual, and not having that continuity of care as well. Your midwife not giving you like that information, like what you were saying about the midwife who,
Yeah.
hopefully she was okay, but disappeared in the middle of it,
Yes.
and just feeling like there's nobody, and then seeing a familiar face and feeling like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, we just have, this is one thing we can hold on to, but not
Definitely.
having the like being at the center of your care. I guess this is the thing that was missing so much, and being like, Okay, hang on. What is it that you want to know? What do you want to know about the induction process? Let's go through the
Mm.
brain's acronym. Let's describe the benefits, of which there are many and there are risks. And, all of those things, the alternative. What does your intuition say? And yes, you do have the option to do nothing and the science, and how something so simple could have also just changed the mental and
Mm.
emotional view of the birth. And when we talk about, like, say for example, the research that you were doing and the changes that can happen, it's not necessarily about this big system we need to implement, or we need to
Yes.
get this machinery and this
Yes.
equipment and more of these people. It always comes back to love and
Yeah.
kindness.
Definitely, Tando, definitely. I think what you just said about being offered options, it felt like there were no options. The induction had to happen because it was 24, 48 hours after my waters had broken and labor hadn't started spontaneously. So nobody had a conversation with me about options, which would have been lovely. And much like you said, really putting me in the center, I think it was just that time. The 10 minutes is really where my voice was. Up until then, I think my experience could have happened to anybody. There was no, where is Maya in all this? Nobody sat
Yes.
down and it had to be me bringing myself into all of it, saying, "I need 10 minutes." I can imagine a sort of more tired version of me, perhaps a less outspoken version of me, maybe a more hormonal version of me would have just gone, "Fine, let's just go to theater." That so it could have just been very different that I didn't even ask for that 10 minutes. It was that version of me at that point was just like, "Stop, just stop. I just need some time. I need something to happen here where I'm back in the picture." And like you said, not being in the center of it all. And I think, yeah, like we're both saying, it's not a criticism of the system, but the system does need to be criticized because if I
Yeah.
think about how the midwifery sort of pathway is for women on the NHS, I met up with the same midwife, Tando, over 9 months for all those appointments, and then she wasn't there at the birth. So Tando, she didn't nobody knew who I was. Even when I
Yeah.
went into hospital, nobody I didn't see her. I saw her as a community midwife afterwards, and I just thought, "You're the person who's taken the time to get to know me for 9 months. You're the person who knows my birth plan." And yet
Yeah.
the NHS pattern of putting people on certain shifts or deciding who goes where means that I don't meet the one person who I've got to know, who I've had that continuity of care with during the time when it's most crucial.
Yes,
And I just
exactly.
think, gosh, and even for her, it would have been lovely for her to see that whole process through that I'd met Maya for 9 months and now I get to meet her on the day that she meets her baby.
Yes, absolutely. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have a job, like a midwife would be doing that continuity of care. And it makes such a huge difference, not just because, oh, it's a familiar face. She knows me, she knows my story.
Mhm.
And I guess one of the other things that the system very much then doesn't see is, okay, you've had your baby, you leave, maybe, you hand it over to the community midwives, but it's not seeing then what that does
Yes.
to families and to
Yes.
women and their perception, their relationship with their babies, their relationship with their bodies, their relationships with
Yes.
each other, and
Yes.
you're left then having to pick up all of those pieces, in so many different ways that it's just not considered.
Definitely. Completely agree with you. If I'm reflecting on what that was like then to go home with Harry, that was really hard. It was so hard. First of all, then Harry was born, and we were really just happy, relieved that he was born happy. And then Adam was told the following morning he had to leave because of COVID, so he couldn't be around. So at 5 a.m., he was told to leave the hospital, and I had to be on the ward completely alone, again with all the curtains because of COVID. So Adam could come back at 5 p.m. that evening, and I had that cannula still in, and I needed the loo, and I had a catheter in, and also, when I did go to the toilet for the first time, I said, "Could somebody come and just be with my baby?" And they were like, "We don't have somebody to be with your baby." So I was then walking from the edge, the last kind of bay, all the way to the toilet, just thinking, "My child, my child." This is the first time I've had to leave them basically alone. They've been in my stomach for 9 months and been
Yeah.
like safe and with me close by. And now I don't know what it's going to be like in this toilet. I don't know what I'm going to meet. I don't know what's going to happen to my body when I go to the loo as well. I've been told
Yeah.
after having the stitches and everything, it might be tender, and I'm just listening, hoping nothing happens to my child. That I think then was going to affect how I am at home then with Harry and just holding him close and wanting to be with him all the
Absolutely.
time. I think also
Exactly.
Totally done it. The community midwives that first time then was so helpful. After Harry, I'd say that was where the care was brilliant. They were wonderful. They came a number of times. It was so supportive with breastfeeding. This time with Allegra, actually, it's been very different. I had just had the stitches with Allegra. This was 3 days after giving birth, and I was told, go to the hospital, go to the hospital, go to the hospital, 3 days in a row. It was exhausting to have to do that. And yet, some of those tests could have been done in a hospital closer to home or could have been done at home. And I was so glad to be able to speak to you, who said to me, Maya, you could advocate for this. And so the following week I said, I'm sorry, I'm not leaving the house. I hope I can have the appointments at home because it's impeding my healing. I can't
Yes.
do these walks from the hospital car park to the hospital ward, around the hospital itself. I can't do these walks just because of the way that my body is healing after this tear. So you're right, the whole process, and I think that actually feeds in quite nicely to our story with Allegra in terms of what happened with the gatekeeping when we thought that there was we thought labor was going to start at the end of January, and that then impacted what happened with the birth of her as well. That during pregnancy, there was an experience that changed my perception of, can I trust my body? I think it is labor. I'm not sure if it is. And then that impacts when I'm actually pregnant and when I'm actually going through then labor itself and thinking, but I don't want to make a big fuss out of things if it's not labor. And so I delay.
Honestly, kudos to you guys because a number of things could have happened, after Harry's birth. You could have gone, do you know what? I'm not going to have another child.
Wonder.
This is horrendous. I'm so fearful. And what you decided to do was go, do you know what? Actually, I'm going to take my power back. I'm going to make sure I get informed. I'm going to make sure I go through what happened before, and really unpack that and
Yes.
create safe spaces where I can feel heard, where you can both feel heard and, you can be told, no, that wasn't right. Let's criticize and then we can improve.
Yes,
We have to
definitely.
acknowledge the things that don't always go right. I want things to be different. What can I do? I'm not going to just stop at like criticizing the system, but I'm going to speak up and say, this is what's important to me. This is what I didn't like last time. Let's discuss the options. Let the midwife like even just like show you a video, take the time to show you the video of the labor ward and how we can change that environment should Allegra decide to come a bit early, before 37 weeks. But as we now know, she had her own plans, our little comedian, as we call her. So take me back to the planning with the birth of Allegra. So when you then decided, 4 years, almost four
Yeah.
years after Harry's birth, to go, okay, we're going to have another baby, and what your mindset was going into things this time around, knowing what you knew, having experienced what you've experienced before.
Tender, you raised such a good point because me and Adam were in that place of maybe we won't have more children after that experience with Harry. We were there for a long time. And it was really that thinking back to Adam's thought process of, I didn't think I was ever going to meet my son. And I thought something was going to happen during theatre.
Oh,
And being able to come back from that and think, actually, we can be safe in this environment. We can be safe during this experience. It took us so long to get to that place where we felt safe enough to be able to say to each other, okay, let's enter into this again. Let's give this another try. And we also then saved up so that we could go private this time because we just thought that if that was the care the NHS provided, we've had an experience of it and it did not
yes.
serve us in any way. It actually traumatized us. We do not want to go through that again. So very similar to what you're saying, there was so much reflection on our part of how can we ensure that this experience will be different, maybe not safer or wonderful or really lovely, just different. We just don't want the same thing that we had with Harry. We would love it to be safer, we would love it to be amazing, but that's an optional added extra if we can possibly have that. Right now we just want it to be different. We can't go through that trauma all over again. And like you said, a lot of my experiences from that then were an internalization that I couldn't cope with pain. I didn't even realize that I'd internalized that. But I did think, well, if this is how lots of mothers are left alone at midnight to have to deal with this pain of induction by themselves, and they can cope with it, I must be inadequate in some way, that I'm not able to cope with it. There must be a pain threshold that I can't meet. And this is something I guess it's really abstract. Again, you can't speak to people about it. People can't go, yeah, my pain was about an 8 out of 10. And you're like, yeah, actually, I get your 8 out of 10. I think mine would be about an 8 because our pain thresholds, our experiences are different. So I'd internalize that. to the point where I think I shared with you where I wanted to get my ears pierced a second time and I was scared. I asked Adam to come with me and I thought, if I can't cope with that pain of childbirth, then maybe I can't cope with this pain of getting my ears pierced. Maybe I'm just not capable. And so I had Adam there and I was really prepared and I had him there holding my hand. And then it happened and I was like, this is fine. And then I went to get my ears pierced the third time by myself, like, just to show to
Yeah.
myself that actually, Maya, what you had internalized, and like you said, Tanda, was a really unique experience and a uniquely traumatic experience. This
Yeah.
is not the norm, and this is hopefully what won't happen the next time that you experience labor and birth. And so having those open discussions between Adam and I was really important during the course of that 4 years to start thinking about having an extra member of the family. And then it was the beginning of last year where we thought, okay, maybe we'll start trying this year at some point. We're both feeling like things are moving in a direction where we feel more comfortable with raising Harry and we could have a baby now. I think my mindfulness research had also helped with that too. And I was fortunate enough to be able to qualify as a mindfulness based childbirth and parenting teacher as well. I had a scholarship to that program, which was lovely. So I felt a lot more, like you said, informed, equipped, kind of empowered with a lot more of an approach now to labor and birth that I didn't have before going into it as a first time mum during COVID, where I just thought I really did think, and Tanda, I think this is part of who I am as a person, that ability to be able to be held by others is something I think is such a privilege. I'm so lucky. For example, you holding me during this pregnancy experience, I'm so lucky, so fortunate to have had you. And I would have loved that to have been the case with the NHS. That's what I just allowed myself to think. I tell people to go to hospital. I tell people to use NHS services. As a pharmacist, I advocate for use of these services, how lucky we are to have a national health system in the UK.
Yeah.
And then to be hurt by it so badly. And that's why we decided to have the private care and we just changed things and had those open conversations. And we weren't afraid to say, like you said, what does the labour ward look like? Take us there, please. We'd like to see it right now. What might happen if I go to 42 weeks? Do I have to be induced at that point in France, for example? 42 weeks is fine. So let's
Yeah.
talk openly about risks and benefits here. So you're right. I think I went in with a lot more of an informed approach, but recognizing that the NHS can't hold me. It can't hold me in the way that I need to be held. So what can I do to structure the environment so I can still be held in those moments? And that's where you came in and we were so, so lucky to have you, Tando. So, so lucky. So with Allegra, then I guess it was the decision to start thinking about trying then was last spring, and then much quicker than we thought. I had some issues with some bleeding at points and we were a bit worried, but again, went for a scan, very strong heartbeat. So she is a being who really, I take it that she wants to be in this world.
Yeah.
And her birth story tells us that too, the way that she arrived on her own terms, all the
Yes.
tests that we all had guessed. She didn't pick any of them, and then quickly. So I
Yeah.
think of it as well that although I grew them cell for cell, I'm so lucky. That is the privilege of a lifetime to be there while they grow up, to be by their side, to see them become them. So yeah, that was our
Exactly.
experience, I guess, having lots of open conversations, having lots of open conversations with each other, Adam and I. So we felt safe to do this again. And then with the medical team, and then also coming to you to say, Tando, will you be on our team? And you saying yes, which was so, so fortunate. And having that experience then with you and the medical team too. And then, like you said, sadly, we had that experience at the end of January that kind of set us back a little bit. But I think the larger experience from that team was positivity and love. And the midwives all were really involved in our care and they tried to offer as personalized care as possible, which was
Yeah.
really, really nice.
Exactly. The appointments were, I can't even
Yeah.
remember, but like it wasn't the 10 minutes
Yes.
appointments. We really got to know the team. They made sure that we got to meet a few of them because, of course, they can't promise that when you're in labor, one of us will be there, but just kind of like spreading the chance of having that familiar face there. And it
Yes.
was so beautiful, even the antenatal sessions, and just also integrating him into the experience, recognizing it's a rite of passage for him as well. Him meeting me being, a familiar face and, understanding that, yes, of course, he's still your baby. And he might do, what we need to find a different word for this instead of regression, but
Yes.
just him still wanting to be close, wanting to have more cuddles as well. And it was just so beautiful. And it's interesting how you were saying about the ear piercing and how you were thinking, oh, maybe I don't know how to cope with pain because
Yes.
you cope so well, and in that, when Allegra decided to finally come after dismissing all of our bets on which date she was going to come, and then she decided on that Tuesday morning, okay, enough teasing now,
Yeah.
this is it. And you labored so beautifully when we were chatting on the phone, when you called me that morning, and you were in your power. I did not sense any fear in you, and there was just so much trust in your body, in your process, in Allegra. You really trusted that you were going to be held, and just that experience, like, even just supporting you just over the phone during that time, I was like, this is it. There was no, I didn't sense any
Yeah.
fear or panic, and it was just so beautiful. So I'd love to just talk through the experience then from, that moment to then us being in the same space.
Yes, yes. The adventure that was the birth of Allegra, definitely done. No. So yes, it was just before 3 a.m. I woke up, like you said, on Tuesday morning with contractions. And I'd had that sort of wake up with contractions before, so it wasn't anything new to me. But I was
Yes.
like, this feels a bit interesting. So I think I texted you just saying, woken up with this. And I think I called you about 10 minutes after that just to say, woken up with this. And I just got up out of bed. I went to the loo and then I came back. I did my meditation, the same meditation that I did with Harry, and that's how I started this whole process. And then I had like lamps on, lights down low, and was in bed for the beginning part of the contractions. Just felt like cramps again. I couldn't feel the ripple that I started to feel later on with the wave of them coming. Just felt like cramps. And I was in bed and I could stay in bed probably. And I was, like you said to me, just monitor them, see how often they come. And so it was about one every 10 minutes. And so I was in bed and I could lie horizontal and that felt comfortable. And then after about an hour or so, it started to not feel comfortable lying in bed. So I was like, okay, instinctively, what do I feel like doing? So I started bouncing on the birth ball. Started bouncing on the birth ball. Just thought, let's just change position. Let's see how this feels. And that felt better. It did. And I put some music on at that point. I had a playlist I'd got for early labor. And then the oxytocin bubble that I got for later on, which I didn't need. So just had the early labor playlist on, which was great, and just some like really slow songs. And for some reason, Adam and I had been watching game shows in the preceding weeks before Allegra was born, and an answer kept coming up, which was a song. It was Fleetwood Mac song everywhere. And I was like, okay, let me see. Like this song just keeps coming up. It's an answer in these game shows. And one of the the lyrics in there was, I want to be with you everywhere. And I thought, that's really lovely. That's how I want to be with my baby. I do want to be with my baby everywhere. So it was quite nice just thinking, listening to that song intensely, bouncing on the ball. And then measuring the contractions still. Coco came in at this point. It was lovely. I sent you a picture of Coco being like, my birth companion. So I had Coco there just watching me. Every time I went to the loo again, Coco following me, coming back. So this is really lovely, Coco. Thank you. And then the contractions got a little bit more painful. And I thought, okay, what can I do now? And I remembered the comb that you and I had spoken about. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. And so they weren't so bad. So I tried the comb like this way around. Then I tried the comb this way around during one contraction and thought, probably this way around feels a bit better. And that's when I started to feel. So it was probably around sort of 5:36. They started to feel a bit like I could feel them starting and then getting more intense. But then I couldn't feel them going. I just felt it disappear. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this is I guess the way that I'm feeling them. This is the way my body's feeling them. Cool. Okay. And so like you said, absolutely no fear, no panic, just kind of like a watchful waiting almost, just like
Yes.
quiet observation of this is what my body's going through, this is how I'm feeling, this is what's working for me right now. I thought, could I try coming off the birth ball in the gap between the contractions and lying on it? And then I was like, oh no, because I'm pregnant, I'm not very mobile. Now the contraction's coming, I have to get up. Oh, so I was like, just stay on the ball, Maya. Just stay, because they're trying to get him going back to bed. And I was like, nope, this is not helping at all. So I came back. So a little bit of experimentation as well during that time. So again, not feeling worried or anything like that, just thinking that just see what my body responds to and let's just go with how I'm feeling right now. Um, And then Adam woke up around 7:30. The app had flashed up, Tando, at this point, and I think I texted you saying the app. I didn't text you saying the app's telling me to go to hospital, but I was like, but the app's telling me, and it's actually not that bad, this pain. And maybe if we are gatekept, I don't want to have got everybody up and then got everybody to the hospital. So instead, the pain's not too bad. And we were told by the midwife the week before, you shouldn't be able to speak. I was like, I'm able to speak to you. I'm speaking to Coco. So actually, this is okay. Yeah, this is all right. So maybe it's not as intense as it should be. So Adam gets up around 7:30. Adam is like, Maya, what is going on? We should be at the hospital already. You and I had spoken. We were like, we might just watch and see after 7:30 when the light comes up. Maybe labor will stay, maybe it won't. So we'll just keep an eye on it. So Adam's flurry, I was like, Adam, you're making a big deal out of nothing. We're fine. We're absolutely fine. Harry was up at this point too. So I said to Harry, I said, I'm having these like big stomach aches because your sister's coming. And so when your sister comes, I get a bit of a stomach ache. So he's talking to me, and then a contractor comes. I was like, sorry, Harry, I have to put my headphones on. And he saw me there just breathing. The breathing as well, Ted. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the breathing helped me from the beginning. I was doing 4 in, 8 out, just to try and stimulate my vagus nerve to try and relax. So it's 4 in, 8 out. That helped me so much. And the counting in my mind as well. So
Yeah.
really, it was the music, the breathing, the comb, and the ball. Those are my 4 things that helped.
And the cats, the oxytocin
Definitely.
agents.
Yeah,
Let's not
that's
forget
exactly
them. We
right.
need to give them a shout out. They've been
Definitely.
doing time for weeks.
Definitely, definitely, you're right, they were, and Coco showing up as well, and then even Harry, having Harry there as well afterwards, giving him a hug. "Mommy, are you okay?" "Yes, Harry, I'm absolutely fine." Harry sadly wasn't feeling too well, and on that day, Adam would have taken him to nursery, and I think then Adam called you, and Adam said, "What should we do?"
So the conversation I had with him was like, okay, I'm getting myself ready. He said, oh, Harry's not feeling so well,
Mm,
not sure what to do. And I was like, okay, we figured out, we made other arrangements, you know?
my God.
And I was thinking, okay, if I drive to you, I don't feel confident that we're going to then be able to drive to the hospital, which
Yes,
was from yours about 45 minutes on a
yes,
good day. But now
yes.
it was showing that it was going to be, I can't even
Hour
remember,
and a
like
half.
even longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, the conversation was, do you know what, Adam, let's make a plan. I'm going to be in the corner where we met before,
Yes.
where we sometimes used to say goodbye when we would go to the hospital for the antenatal meetings. Said, I'm going to be at that corner. Just because also Adam was saying that he was struggling to get you into the car.
Yes, because I was like, "I need my bathing ball, I don't wanna leave, Adam. The ball is really helpful."
I was like, can you give her the phone, please? I don't know what I channeled. Normally, I'm like super calm, whatever. I said,
Yeah.
Maya, you're doing really well. You need to get in the car.
Yes.
I'm going to be at the hospital. I'm going to meet you there
Yeah.
because it would have taken me like an hour and a half or so to drive to you. And I thought,
Yes.
I don't know, this little baby girl is playing some tricks on us, you know,
Definitely,
she's in control.
definitely.
Let's make sure we get you to your safe space.
I
Yeah.
remember saying to you as well though, I was like, "Pretendo, I won't have the ball," and you were like, "But you'll be okay in the car." So I think it was just I was hanging on to like, "Oh, this was a lovely setup," and I had
Yes.
it, and it was dim, and it was just me and Coco, and it was quiet, and it was lovely, and now I have to move from that to, I guess, an unknown. I think that that's where maybe I was a little bit unsure, and maybe a little bit of panic might have set in at that point, but I
Yes.
was like, "Okay." I think also I was panicked because then because Harry wasn't going to nursery, Adam had to call my parents to come
Yeah.
at 7:20. He thought they'd set off then at 7:30, and when he called my mum at 7:30, she was like, "No, I haven't left yet." Then about 7:40, she ended up at our house around 8:20 because of traffic, and that's when then we set off to go to the hospital. And 8:20, we are caught in rush hour. So this
Yes.
is where the contractions were not that bad at this point. The waves weren't that bad. I was still able to talk. I was able to say to you, "I'm waving goodbye to my birthing ball now," and get into the car. And like I've said to you before, I kind of went in like Eminem. I had my headphones on, I had my
Yes.
hood up, I wasn't looking at anything. You texted me a wonderful message saying, "Don't look out the window, stay grounded." And I remember that that message popped up, and I thought, yes, I'm going to channel that when I'm in the car. I'm going to channel that. So still have my music on, still have my Fleetwood Mac on repeat, and some Harry Styles as well, some As It Was, a lovely instrumental version. So just and like a couple more songs I think I listened to before. Just had those 4 songs on repeat, and had my comb in my hand. Just had that in my hand, and that was it. Then during the course of the drive, the contractions got much stronger and much more intense and much closer together. And it was probably the last half an hour when, like we joke, Adam kept saying, "We've got 20 minutes left." And I was like, "Stop saying 20 minutes, 30 minutes to a birthing woman is just like forever.
Eternity.
Oh, eternity, exactly. Then I was like, stop saying it. But I think it was for him just to kind of set
Yes.
himself because it was an hour and a half. And so he had his arm behind, so I was able to squeeze his hand, which was great. And then also just breathing and the comb and the music. That's all I had then. That's all I focused on. And we called you as well. And there was a point at which you said, because I was really feeling her then come down, my birthing canal, I could feel her really descending. And I said
Yeah.
to Adam a couple of times, I think I'm going to give birth now. I think you need to stop on the side of the road. And we called you as well. And you said to me, Maya, what you've got to try not to do right now is push. Try not to push in the car. And I think that was because you thought Adam delivering Allegra on the side of the road on the way to Hammersmith just isn't really what any of us signed up for.
At all. And I could really feel like when I spoke to you then and I could hear you like, in those
Yes.
roars, and I was
Yes.
thinking, I know this baby could come at any
Yes.
second. And I felt
Yes.
like I was just asking you for the world, saying, whatever you do, please do not push. And I was there on the corner waiting, looking at every car that was passing by. I remember Adam saying, I can't remember what it was, if it was like 26 minutes or
Yes.
a specific number. And it just felt like such a long time. And I was just really trying to almost like connect somehow, I don't know, telepathically with Allegra, with you, then just
Yes.
like almost like, okay. And also understanding that was such a huge task for
Yeah.
Adam. Like for me, he'll always be the hero in
Agreed.
Allegra's birth
Agreed.
because
Agreed. And
an hour and a half in
yeah.
rush hour traffic
Yep.
with your wife
Yes.
laboring
Yes.
literally on birth's door
Yes.
after the experience with Harry as well. I just think, like, what a hero. Like, anyone
Yeah.
in that situation could have just been like, I'm going to panic. I can't do
Yes.
this.
Yes.
And actually, him was doing the job that we needed to be done because I
Yes.
was on the corner calling the ward upstairs saying, I'm on the corner, they're on their way. I'll let you know as soon as they arrive, we're going back up. And they were saying, yes, we know they're on their way. Let us know, so that coordination.
Oh, Hando, it was so wonderful to have you there, having that set up, and then us to be in the car, and like you said, Adam having something to do. There was a point at which I was like, Adam, you have to stop the car because I feel like she's coming now. So Adam did, and Adam tried to call an ambulance and said, my wife is in labor. Could I have an ambulance, please? And they were like, where exactly are you? And Adam was like, I'm on the side of the road. And they were like, we need an exact address. And Adam was like, I'm on the side of the road. My wife's about to give birth. I need help. And they were like, sorry, we can't help unless we have an exact address. So Adam then just ran back into the car and just said, Maya, we're on our own. We have to go and meet Tando. Tando's waiting there for us. And we just kept saying that Tando's waiting there for us. And so that was really like, so just visualizing you there was like, oh my gosh, Tando's waiting there for us. That was the first thing. The second thing is I just kept saying, I'm okay, I'm safe. I'm okay,
Yes.
I'm safe. That was my affirmation. I just kept saying to myself. And then there was a point which Adam was like, you're okay, you're safe. And it was really nice to have that kind of two-way, that like, you're okay, you're safe, you're okay, I'm okay, I'm safe. So both of us saying it just helped me feel so much calmer in the moment. Especially when I think that was the hardest thing, Tando, when you said to me, don't push, my body wants to push. It was
Yeah.
so hard. I managed to put my foot against the back of Adam's driver's seat. And then like that was what took the counter pressure. That was pushing against that, not pushing from down here.
Yes.
That was so, so hard. Thinking about when we then eventually arrived at hospital and we saw you there. Oh my gosh, Tando, we were both like, Adam was like, I'm going to jump this red light if I need to. He didn't need to, luckily. But because after the ambulance didn't
Opening the
help us.
car door, you were like lounging. It was almost like you were on, I don't know, some beach somewhere, but obviously you're completely different to that. Just,
Because you said to me, don't push. Now, like I mentioned to you, I'd heard upright, forward, and open were pushing positions. So I was like, not upright, not forward, not open. Like that.
the door thinking, am I going to see Allegra just there?
I could really feel her at that point, Tanda. Really, really.
And do you want to take us through the next bit,
Yeah.
the crucial next bit as well?
What was so beautiful then is the way that you greeted me at the car, much like you said, I guess for you, there's still, okay, I need to double check they're okay. And I'm looking for cars, I'm trying to see where they are. But you maintain this really beautifully composed, gentle presence, Tando. And so when I opened the door, I remember you saying, "My love, you're here." I felt like crying, and you were like, "My love, you're here, and we'll take you to meet your baby." It was so lovely, Tando. And I still remember like your tone of voice. It was so, so lovely. And I just thought, okay, I'm safe. I'm okay. I don't
Yes, I remember saying
Sarah,
you're
yeah.
safe. Oh,
Yeah, you did. You did.
I will never forget that
Yeah.
moment, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. And even just seeing Adam, and I remember him getting out of the car and
Yes.
just being like a sigh of relief,
Yes.
like,
Yes. That
we
we had
made it. It's
visualized seeing you at the
okay.
corner.
I
Yes.
kept them safe.
Yes.
And
Yes.
oh, I just, yeah.
Yeah,
They're like,
definitely. It was a good idea, like you said, for Subaru
there
tissues.
you go, smoothie, water, tissue.
Well, like you said, Adam did it. Adam did that job, and we had visualized you, and you were there, and that was it. We knew, even if everything in the midwife lab birthing center went however it did, we knew we could trust that you would be there, and you were there waiting for us. And it's just like, oh, that's what I meant by feeling held. That you were there in that moment. That was such a hard moment, like laboring in the car, and it just letting us down again by not helping us out with the ambulance and not
Yes,
following what's going to meet us, but just knowing you'd be there. That meant
yeah.
everything, and then you were there. And then you were like, "Okay, let's go up to the birthing center." And I was like, "No, Tando, I'm gonna give birth here." It's like, "I don't think I can
You
do
crossed the road.
it."
You took 3 steps.
On the pavement, Maya drops down. And I was like, "Tanda, I think I'm gonna take off my trousers now. I'm gonna give birth now." And you were like, "Maya." And so you helped me gently put my trousers back on, covered me with my dignity with my coat. And this lovely bypassing pregnant lady was like, "Can I help with anything?" So you had to manage me and the intensity of knowing exactly what happened that morning. You'd woken up with me at 3 a.m. and now it was 9:30. Then you had to manage me all of a sudden on the floor telling you I'm gonna give birth here, and then this bystander. And you did it so beautifully, Tando. You were like, "No, thank you so much." And she was like, "I can get you anything." You were like, "We don't need anything." And then I think you shouted to a random gentleman to be like, "We need a wheelchair." And then all of a sudden this wheelchair comes. My eyes are clamped shut at this point. I just hear what's happening. And then I feel both of you pick me up, I guess, arm by arm to put me in the wheelchair. And
Yes.
then I think you said to me, and I said to you as well, I think you said, "Keep your eyes closed." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to keep my eyes closed," because I knew where we'd be going into. And I knew that was the waiting area and it would completely distract me and take me out from being with my body. But it just felt like going through that. We flew through that. Did we fly through that? My eyes.
Yes, we flew. So what happened was with you just very gracefully, just in your like typical beautiful Maya fashion. Oh, I'm just going to lay down. She's coming. And you just so gracefully just lay there on the pavement. And then I remember this man coming towards us. I don't know where he was going, but I said, "You get me an not an
Wheelchair.
ambulance, a wheelchair." So
Mm.
he ran. This woman came, and I remember my hand was almost like Harry's game of freeze, where I was trying to protect the space, and I said,
Yes.
"We're okay. It's okay. We don't need any help." And
Yeah.
what I'd done in the meantime, as we're pulling your trousers back up, is call the ward again and say, "You need to send midwives here. The baby is coming right now." And they got the message, like they understood the tone, the urgency,
Yes.
all whilst still trying to be calm and not letting you feel that,
You were incredible, Tando. I didn't feel it at all. I just felt cared for at that point. I was like, "I'm with Tando, all is good. I'm with Tando, all is
Yeah.
good." Yeah.
So when that man came with the wheelchair, I said to him, "Put the brakes on." And then when I looked up again, I saw the midwives with the delivery packs running out the hospital
Yeah.
coming. So it was me
Yeah.
and one of the midwives
Yeah.
picking you up, putting you on the
Oh.
wheelchair. And then, yes, we flew from
Mhm.
outside of the hospital to the ward, to the birth center. And I remember saying, "Keep your eyes shut," and mentioning that one of the midwives was
Yes.
there as
Yeah.
well,
And
because
so I
I
opened my
knew.
eyes for a second and I saw her and I just felt like, "You're here, she's here." And just somebody again I recognized and I just feel safe with. And I think Fiona was next to her as well. So I was like, people I
Yes,
recognize, people who I know who care about me. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
People who, yeah, who I would have wanted to be at this in this moment with me. And so I just felt like, okay. And I think I felt my body again just settle again in that moment in that lift where I was just like, okay, if this is it, then this is it.
yes. And people who they were rooting for you, and like you could feel it was so
Yes.
palpable, the oxytocin in those sessions. The laughter, we had to, like, stop laughing and talking so many times so
My
they
blood
could take
pressure
the
was
blood
high.
pressure.
That's it, Tante. For a
It was
medical reason, we had to not laugh.
and I remember me and Peace on that wheelchair running. We flew, the doors were opening, and we were running. We were sweating. We were looking at each other like, okay, let us go. This is not the kind of birth that we grew up
Mm.
seeing on TV, where it's like
Yes.
waters break.
Yes.
Okay, push, 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 babies. Yeah, but
Yes.
but you could really feel
Mm.
the energy and the love and everyone just rooting for you. It was like everything that you had done had led up to this beautiful moment of her arrival, which happened completely how we all didn't plan. She just had her own idea and she was going to do it that way. And oh, it was so, so beautiful seeing you, especially knowing like the journey you had in the car, then seeing you completely surrender
Yes.
and soften. You surrendered as you were like laying on that pavement coming
Yes,
down,
I
but
did
just
there.
the like,
Totally.
I'm in my safe space here. I'm going to be held. Nobody's
Yes.
forgetting about me. I'm nobody's problem.
Yes. Yes, Tando, yes, definitely. It rewrote, I would say it definitely rewrote all of that. When I opened my eyes and I could see you were there, Peace was there, Fiona was there. It's exactly how I felt. So held by all of you in that moment. And so I think it even led to then when we did end up in the midwife-led birthing center and you laid me on the bed and all of you were like, Maya, can you move? And I was like, nope. And you're like, Mike, can you take it off? Nope. It's like you said, this is
Had a
not like
coat
me.
on.
Yeah, go on.
You had your thick dressing gown on as well.
Good on. Yep. But I was like, nope. It's like you said, I totally surrendered at that point. I was like, I can't do any of this. I think I came back to my body and just felt like I'm safe. I'm ready to give birth. All this extraneous stuff, I don't even know what it means. I am here to give birth. This is what and you guys have helped me feel safe to do that. This is where I can finally do that now. This is what my body's been wanting to do. And so
Yeah.
this is why I was like, sorry, nope, we can't do that. And then I think there was a point where I had a contraction and I screamed and you and Peace were like, no, Maya, really gently. You were like, Maya, come back to your breath. Both of you.
Yeah.
And Peace said, Maya, you can do a 5-5. And you said, Maya, you can do the 4-8 that you were doing. And it
Yeah.
was just, I still remember that. My eyes were closed. I remember feeling that contraction. I remember just yelping, and both of you were like, no. And then I went completely quiet. And I
Yeah.
did the breathing. I did the 5-5, and I had time to
Yes.
do the 4-8 as well. And then
Exactly.
the next contraction, I think you moved up to my hands. So you were holding my hands, and Peace went down to my legs. And then so I felt it. That was the one contraction. And then I felt the second contraction where you all said to me, push. You were like, you can push now, push, but push gently. And so I pushed, and I could feel that it was like that ring of fire. I felt it. I felt that like it was fizzing, it was sparkly, it was like electric, but it did not feel. Lots of people I've read about have said that that feels really, really intense, like the most painful part of labor. Nothing beat not pushing in the car. Like
Yeah.
not pushing the car. Oh, Tanda, that was so hard because I'm going against my body, I guess.
Yes,
It was
exactly.
so hard to do that. That was the most intense pain I've ever experienced. So the allowing my body to go through the spark leaving a fire and feel this was lovely to be in my body as that was happening. And then I felt her come out. It felt like something squishy, squelching out of my body. I was like, oh, just something's come out. And then I think Peace said at this point, like and Peace both said, do a different type of breathing because I think she needed to just move her around. So just do gentle breathing. So I did some gentle breathing and then she's out. That's it. And then she
Yeah.
was on my chest. And you'd said to me a few times, do you want to look at her? And I had my eyes closed still. And I think at that point I was just relief, Tano. I've been reflecting on like, why didn't I just open my eyes immediately and look at my baby? But it was just relief. I was like,
Yes.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was happening in the car. I had to push against it. And I said to her, like, Allegra, don't come out right now. Just wait till the hospital. And now she's finally here. And it was like, whew, what have I been through? And then it was a couple of times you said, do you want to look at her? And then I did. I opened my eyes to look at her. I just felt like, gosh, it's surreal. It's actually happened. And then Adam turned up and I was like, Adam, she's here. Just seconds after Tanda, she'd come
Yeah,
out.
like literally, I don't know, a handful of seconds, but it was beautiful, even just you taking that sacred pause of like, oh, okay, relief, and okay, yes, okay, now I'm ready to look at her.
Yes, taking my time. And I think there was a point at which she was coming out, and I don't know if you were like, "I need to be down there," and I was like, "Nope, you're not going anywhere, Tanda." Yep. We'd written in the birth plan, Tanda will catch her. Nope. I was like, no, Tanda, I need you. This is what so I think this whole experience was me prioritizing me. This whole birth
Yes.
experience was and me putting, like you said, myself at the center of it, recognizing that we'd set up the environment for others to do that, but if they couldn't, I had to do it for me. And I
Yeah.
think that started it's almost like me doing the mindfulness during Harry's birth was my way of walking so I could run during this period of time and I could
Yes.
speak up for myself and say, I'm not doing that, I'm not doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And that's
Absolutely.
so not my nature to be that outspoken and that honest and open about my needs. But this time, I think something else took over and I just recognized this is how I have to be here. And this is what I would hope my daughter will be like too. And if
Yes.
I need to role model those beliefs and behaviors for her so that she can
Absolutely.
not feel afraid to take up space, not feel afraid to speak up for her needs. And that's why I think at that point then I was like, nope, don't know what you're saying. So peace had her and then peace put her on my chest and you were like, have a look at her when you're ready. And I took that moment. Mm.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. And I remember us then afterwards, you
Mm.
feeding. Adam
Yes.
had some beautiful skin to skin contact as well. And it was just so peaceful. And it didn't feel like there was a rush as well. It was so lovely. I remember us going into theater as well. And the
Yes.
environment was just, it wasn't, it didn't feel like we're going into a space and there's a procedure that's going to
Yes.
happen.
Yes.
That sacredness was still there, and everyone in there was just like, this phrase I've coined up of like oxytocin agent,
Mhm.
like keeping things normal as well, but also realizing like this is a mom who's just given birth,
Yes.
and the care we received from Joyce, the anesthetist as
Yeah.
well, listening to music in there
Yes.
as well, the classical music. Do you
Yes.
remember?
Yes, and it was whatever song that came on at one point as well, and the, obstetrician was there, the consultant obstetrician came over and spoke to us, and everybody kept us informed about what was happening.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I remember even at some point, you saying, "Oh, can we also have an update?" And I was holding your hand, stroking your
Yes.
forehead.
Yes, Sandra, it
There's
was so lovely. So,
there's
so
a
lovely.
message you sent me afterwards,
Mm.
which was just so beautiful. Before we began this conversation, I took a screenshot of it because I was like, if there's something I want you to remember
Yeah.
through this experience, it's exactly this. Do you remember when you said I was stroking your forehead in theater and what that said to you was, I am worthy?
Yes, definitely, Dano, definitely. It was so lovely to be held by you like that. And everything that you did in the theater was just for me. And it was just so, so lovely. And if I'm really honest, even getting in touch with you to say, Tano, will you be our birth keeper was for me. It's just been so, so lovely to have you, Tano. Really. Thank you so, so much. Thank you.
Oh, Maya.
Thank you, Tano. You honestly, like, it wouldn't have been what it was without you. We're so, so lucky to have had you. And like, we're so lucky to have had you as well.
I feel like I am the lucky one, for people to go, I'm going to be at my most vulnerable and I trust you to be there.
Yes. Yeah.
And that message, I've read it a few times where you said, it was, I can't remember the exact wording, but something about like, it just made your body feel like I am worthy.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
just thought, gosh, this is what it's about. This is what all women deserve, like to just feel like loved. We need to really amplify love in these
Yes.
environments because we can feel it. The babies can feel it. And it was so beautiful just even being able to, I understand I'm in such a privileged position that the families I work with choose me and we don't know who else we're going to be there. But I think everyone who supported us on that day was just like, they were part of the support system,
Mm.
and
Definitely.
it's amazing to be held by one person, but when you've got so many
Yes.
people, almost like that village, and we couldn't
Yes.
have it. I'm so sorry during lockdown, but just, you know, what you had growing up, that commune of the
Yes.
pregnant women being around you, supporting you, loving you. It's like, okay, with what we have, how can we create that in that environment? And I just think Gosh, just going back to where we started this conversation, little Maya would
Yeah.
be so proud of you
Oh,
for
tender.
speaking up for
Yeah,
yourself and
definitely.
saying, "This is what I need. This is what I deserve. Yes, I am worthy. And despite what we've gone through before, I'm going to really approach this birth with what is it that I need, you know?" And like you were saying about you like walking through Harry's birth so that you could run. Like, I want you for the rest of your life to just sprint when it comes to your needs and loving yourself hard, you know, because this is what we need to model for
Yeah.
both Harry as well as
Yeah.
for Allegra, you know, for them to know that no, we don't need to minimize ourselves, you know, as black and brown people, let's take up space. It doesn't matter if we're being perceived as being angry. Doesn't matter. Get angry if it means
Yes.
you're protecting your health or your
Yes.
babies, you know?
Yes.
But
Definitely.
also, no, I deserve to have my questions answered. I deserve
Mm.
for me to be part of the expertise on the
Mhm.
team as well, you know?
Yes, yes, exactly. I am the person that is best equipped to take care of me. I'm the
Yeah.
person who's most skilled at. I've got 40 years of knowledge of Maya. So that needs to be brought to the table because Maya's going through this, and
Yes.
equally for my children as well. And Tanda, it's so lovely that you use the word magical. Every time I used to think when I was pregnant about Allegra's birth, I'd always think, and I went, a magical birth, a magical birth. I think that is exactly what happened with Allegra. Like we said, little
That's what you
comedian.
got. That's the one thing she listened about. And also, do you know what? I'm going to give her credit. I've been saying for the last couple of years, I haven't had a baby. We haven't had an unplanned home birth. I've been saying, and I haven't had a baby be born in the car on the way to the birth. And I was like, one day, one of these babies is going to catch me out.
She was so close, Tando. She was so close. She was so close. So, now, what did we say? 9:32. We got to the hospital. That's when we met you. 9:37. She was born.
How is postpartum looking for you? What's been helpful this time around as well, knowing, I guess, that this is a different baby?
Yeah,
Eh?
yeah, definitely. I think I'll circle back to what I mentioned with the community midwives and the experience being different with Harry versus now. And so staying in that idea of being more outspoken about my needs and speaking to you and understanding that actually I don't need to make all these hospital trips. I think that's been very helpful. And so having the care provided at home, which I didn't realize. And I think again, I just felt like, okay, we're back in the NHS, so this is what needs to be done. And is everything okay? I think also keeping an informed approach. So when I mentioned to you and I reached out to you about the jaundice and said to you what the measurements were, I spoke to the team and said, "Can I know the measurements?" I think that's been really helpful that I haven't abandoned Maya, the scientist, and just gone, "Oh my gosh, I'm panicked and worried. My baby, my baby." I've just gone, "Okay, this is what's happening to my child. Let me take a step back. Let me understand. And then let me try and approach that as best as I can with like a loving research approach so that I can understand what's happening and actually help my child as best as I can." I think it's been really lovely. Like I mentioned to you, you were so kind at giving contacts as well. So the craniosacral therapist you mentioned, and on her website it said newborns love to be touched. And I was like, well, this is an invitation. So what's been so helpful, I didn't realize that with Harry, with Allegra, I am like kissing her all the time and picking her up before we feed. She's crying in my arms, and I'm like kissing, kissing. And Adam's like, she needs milk, Maya. And I'm like, but I just want to kiss her. I think especially because now Harry's 4, and so when you say, Harry, can I give you a hug? And he goes, no, thank you. And you're like, didn't have to ask for consent before. Like, what? No, thank you. Didn't expect this after 4 years. So now I'm like, soak up as many hugs and kisses as possible before she hits sort of 4 years old. And then it's like, no, thank you. And I have to respect her. No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's been really helpful. Like just taking it really easy, I think. And not putting any pressure. Like it doesn't, nothing has to be done at particular times. I think what
Yes.
happened was maybe it was after the birth with Harry, that experience, I just felt like I didn't do a good enough job, Tando. And so I thought, well, this mothering thing, I'm going to nail it. I'm going to do such a good job. And I think I became the ultimate book parent. And so everything I was looking up to double check. So where Adam would intuitively pick up Harry, I'd be like, sorry, what are you doing? Where did you read that? What's your 3-step process of picking up? Are you're just intuition? What? So that obviously caused a distance between us. And I was very much about the right way of doing things. And so I think having conversations that Adam and I have had over the last 4 years, and also coming to this, I had wanted to have a more mindful pregnancy and wanted to have a more mindful experience with Allegra. And I think that's what I've brought to it there, where I'm just allowing her to dictate what's happening and just seeing what's there and responding to it as best as I can. That's where I feel like I'm at as a parent this time round versus how it was with Harry. And even with the breastfeeding, it was so lovely to have you come over and teach me different ways was so lovely. It's really freed up my hands so I can drink more water. Thank you,
Good.
please.
Yes.
Yep, definitely helped. So I think it's just a different experience this time because sorry, we're different and she's different. And we were trying to put that pressure on ourselves of we know what we're doing. We did this with Harry, but now we're realizing she's different. She's gonna have
Yeah.
different needs and she's gonna be wanting to be soothed in different ways and responded to differently and feeding differently. And so if she's doing that differently, it doesn't mean that we've done anything wrong. It just means she's different and we're
Yeah.
different.
Exactly,
It reminds
exactly,
me
and the
kind of
kind of parents you might need to be to her is
yeah,
different as well, and just enjoying this
yeah,
time, like
definitely.
wear her, go out, like you said, last week you went out into the
Yeah, the
forest and
forest.
Adam was wearing her and just keep on
Yeah.
having that skin to skin contact and
Lovely.
just enjoy this time, as a family of 6, because we are going to include the cats, of course. They were such a crucial part of this whole process. And I just want to really finish off on just saying thank you so much for letting me be a part of this beautiful experience and not just like of your birth experience. It's more than that as well,
Mhm.
It's as part of like your family story,
Yeah.
your love story as
Love
well.
story.
We're forever connected. And I
Yes.
can't help but think about, and I have to mention your grandmothers.
Mm.
I am so certain that they would be so proud of you, honestly. Like, it's so easy to talk about generational trauma and how that can be passed on, but also generational healing is there. And
Mm.
often I say to women in labor, like that same strength that your grandparents have, and your whole lineage to
Mm.
bring you forth, you have that.
Mm.
And I think it's so important to just notice that in terms of like history and the future, you're standing in that part in terms of your family's story
Mm.
forever. And what a beautiful gift to give to Allegra, especially
Mhm.
her as a daughter, for her to know the story as well. And I hope as well, even with Harry's story, when you share that with him, like, he decides in the future to have children, both of them decide, that will also be a story. It's a part of them, it's their beginning. And it's not just about birth, it's also how we carry ourselves forward and
Mm.
how the stories then we create about what we deserve, our relationships with our bodies, and trusting in ourselves and also trusting in the world as well.
Definitely, Tando, definitely. All of those things. All of those things. This whole experience from finding out I was pregnant with Harry to now having Allegra in my arms has been a journey through that. Needs, speaking up for oneself, taking up space, understanding what I need and being able to articulate that in such a way that I'm able to create it if I can. And you were instrumental, Tando. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for being part of our love story. It was so lovely. And you are forever etched in the history of our family. I often think, I don't know why I haven't messaged you still saying this, but when I'm breastfeeding, I just think this is sacred work. I don't
Yes.
go on my phone. Sometimes I'm watching TV, sometimes I'm not. But I just sit there and I just think this is sacred work. And it's just so
Yeah.
beautiful. And the work that you do is sacred work. It's activism. It's the fact that you're there, you're standing there going, this lady at her most vulnerable cannot speak for herself, so I'm here giving her a
Yeah.
voice. Tanda, that is just wow. Wow. My skin is like, oh, prickling just thinking what incredible work that you do and what an incredible presence you are and how lucky we are to have you. Thank you, Tando. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Maya. Thank you.
Virtual hug, big virtual hug.